So what you see here is a Flexbox layout. And in this case, it's a Flexbox gallery. So gallery really just means a collection of images that we have that are related to one another. Now, what Flexbox allows us to do, and I will tell you that that all happens over here on the left side of our screen in our hashtag gallery. So remember, this is an ID. So our gallery ID holds the idea that everything that's inside of our gallery is going to be a flex in the way that we're going to use this. So this particular one happens to be a flexible grid that we're going to use. So I just want to show you what happens with our web page as our viewport starts to expand and as our viewport starts to shrink. What you'll notice is those images are moving based on that. We're not pushing them off the screen. We are not forcing our browser to have to scroll left and right. As our browser shrinks, fewer of those images reside on one line, and as our browser viewport expands, more of those images reside on one line. And all of that is done right here. This is 8.1. You do have this in your student file, so if that's something you want to follow along with, this is 8.1 grid, I believe. Yeah, is the name of this particular file. So here inside of our ID for gallery, we've got our display flex. So what that's going to do is set this up as a flex container. Flex direction row. So what this is going to mean is as that row, so let's say it's one row, starts to, that gap, the overall browser viewport starts to shrink. We are going to flex that row into additional rows based on the size of our viewport. Flex wrap, what that's going to do is indicate that we want to wrap our Flexbox. In this case, it works exactly the same way as text would around an image if you were doing this in Microsoft Word, right? So if we have an element and we have text and we were to simply make that like say an image element, if we were to make that image element bigger, what would happen is the text would automatically wrap, so change its density, how many words there are on a line. That would automatically change based on the size of our image. That's exactly what we want to have happen here. Our justify dash content is related to how much of a gap. You'll see we have, and we don't have to use margin and we don't have to use padding here, but you'll notice that as my viewport shrinks, that's the wrong viewport, that as my viewport, there we go, shrinks, that spacing around our image elements maintains itself automatically. So that's our justify content space around. Where do we get that? Well, we're saying that our image properties here have a margin of 1 EM. So those image properties, or that rather, image property here on line 17 and 18 is keeping that 1 EM margin, but we're justifying the content based on space around. So these two are working together to display rather the content the way we have it here. So inside of our main, in our the body of our HTML, you'll notice that we have this div ID gallery on line number 28. So what we're saying is everything between 28 and 35 belongs to that div gallery, which we defined up here. Each one of these images we are saying is, it's got a height, it's got a width. We could technically do that right here inside of our image, the selector here for image, but we don't have to do that. We could have that here on lines 29 through 34 inside of our gallery in the HTML. So you can do this one of two ways. My suggestion is actually to take this width and height and add these to your image selector in the CSS, because that way, if you want to change this for all of these images, let's say we want to make them double as big, instead of having to change 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of code inside of your HTML over in the CSS, you just have to change 2 pieces of the code, the height and the width, and they're automatically changed for all of your images in there. So this 4 lines of code allows for what we see right here. As our viewport changes size, those elements inside of our gallery, part of our Flexbox, move based on just 4 properties and values that we have here in our CSS. And that's really pretty fantastic.